In this video, we're going to be starting a new section. This section requires that you have watched the previous video, nums between, all right? So we're going to do problem number 24, strings within n. All right, so I have the problem downloaded and opened up in Racket. So let's just look for the problem statement here. Problem A, given a list of string and a number, produce only the strings that are less than the given number. So for example, string within n, list moo, hungry, and cow, 4, right? So how many of these strings are less than 4, right? The length of them. Moo is less than 4, it's 3 characters long. Hungry is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters long. So we don't include it. Cow is 3 characters long, it's under 4. So that's why it's in the output list, all right? You must use local in your solution and also rename your function string dash within n. All right, so pause the video and try to do this on your own. I'm gonna go for spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you guys took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. So signature string within n, it's going to consume as its first argument, given a list of string, right? So list of string, and then a number next, and then it produces, let's see, it produces a list, right? So there we go, list of string. All right, so signature purpose, so produces only the strings with the lengths under the given number. All right, so signature purpose, let's stub this out. So define, we'll say string within n consumes a list of strings, so let's call it str-lst, and then number, let's call this threshold, right? And then this whole thing has to produce a list, so use empty as a dummy value to run against some tests. So check expect. Let's just copy and paste the example that they gave us. So given this, produce this, right? And let's do one for the empty case within n, right? We're given an empty list, right, of strings and the number 9999. It doesn't really matter what number you give us. There's no strings in this list. So we just produce the empty list. All right. And you can do another example here, right? Kind of says, what happens if it's equal to 4, right? Let's do something like meow. Well, the problem statement doesn't really tell us what to do if it's, equal to, just says less than the given number. So let's just not do anything, right? Let's just not include meow, right? Meow is equal to 4, the given threshold. Let's do one where, the threshold is 1, right? None of these strings are 1 letter long. So we would produce the empty list, right? So this is a good set of tests. Hopefully this illustrates what this function should be doing. Just run the examples here. It looks like we just get some mismatches against the stub. That's good. Let's convert this into a template, right? So this would be the recursive template. You do something in the empty case, string list, and then you do something else with the first of the list, string list, and then the recursive case against string within n, and then the rest of the string list, and then you have to pass in the threshold, all right? Threshold. All right, so now really pause the video. Hopefully that should be all the mental scaffolding needed to solve the problem. It's just the first pass though. The second pass will do the local, and I'll explain why later, all right? So pause the video and try to do this on your own. Hopefully this should be all the mental scaffolding needed. I will go over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you guys took a good spin at it. So let's go over it together. So given the empty list, produce empty. All right. Now what do we do? Well, looks like we sometimes include items from the original list to the output list, and sometimes we don't. So we need some decision making that screams that we need an if here. All right, so what do we do with this if? Well, we need to grab looks like we grab the string length, right? Reduces only the strings with lengths under the given number, right? We have to turn these strings into numbers if we want to compare it against the threshold, which is a number, right? So we need to wrap this into a string length and then compare it with the threshold. Compare it with the threshold. All right, to do some comparison here. All right, this comparison is, this has to be less than the threshold. All right, the string length has to be less than the threshold, and then do something in the true case. So we have to produce a list and want to include it in the output list. So that would be a cons of the list, the element in the list, the string itself, onto the natural recursion, which we'll assume will follow the purpose statement here. So just run this code, it works, and we are good to go. So now is test review and refactor. So the reason I had you write this out, sometimes, you know, it doesn't come naturally that this is a filter. You're going from a bigger list and you're producing the subset of the elements of the list, right? Sometimes it doesn't, you know, come at you, so you have to write it verbosely and then go, oh, okay, I typed this out before, so it's probably a keep if or filter, so I can use that instead, all right? So let's abstract this and use local in our solution as the problem told us, all right? So we can abstract this whole thing, right? This whole string within n using one of the built-in abstractions, filter. So define string within n using the filter function over the given list, right? Given string list here, right? Like so, right? So we have to use threshold, right? And you will discover if you write this function, right? This custom function, we'll call it str less than sign, right? You write this given function, define str less than sign, and then you pass in the string itself, and then the threshold, right? And then do this string length like so, do this condition, right? Also, yeah, typing this out the verbose way, you're gonna be, you can actually, you know, map the threshold pretty easily. And this, we've been doing so many recursive problems that this probably comes more naturally, to be honest, rather than abstraction. But nonetheless, that's why I had you guys do this in 2 passes. So there we go. And, you know, this, right, this function, filter requires its function. You pass it. It can only take in 1 argument. It can't take in threshold. So we got to use local here. Local. And you should probably read the documentation on ISL and local, right? Local takes in 2 arguments, right? The first argument is going to be square brace or parentheses. You can use parentheses here, but I like to use square brace because it's more visually distinguishing. And then an expression that could use these definitions here, right? So we want to pass this inside the filter here, right? So the types for this, let's see, string, there we go, consumes a string and then a number and produces a Boolean, right? So that's what we need. We need this function inside this function, right? Because again, filter, you can only take in a 1 argument function. This is a 2 argument function. So to turn this 2 argument function into a 1 argument function, we put it inside the local, we remove the threshold here, and just rely on the natural mechanism that functions will look up to variables, right? Look outside itself to the closest variable that it can find, all right? And also this ... has to be the filter here, right? So this parentheses was the marking of the ending of the function here. So to move the filter inside the local block, so it can use the string greater than here, right? And this also wouldn't be first of LST here, my bad. It would be string, right? Because there's no list. We're not consuming any list here, right? So this would have to be a global if this would work, but nonetheless, right? This is what I meant, right? Please use the parameter we get in, because filter will take the first of the list and pass it to this function. All right, so we run this, all 4 tests pass, and this is how you abstract with local for string within n, right? Within n. We don't need this if and writing all this logic. We can let filter handle the logic, and we declaratively say that, hey, filter this over this string, right? Over the string list. All right, and you're welcome to write the purpose statement here, but for the sake of time, right, this is the final abstraction here, right, like so, right? We don't need that other string greater than, that was just demonstration. All right, so anyways, if you were stuck, I recommend, again, you use the hint, right? Hints tell you what to use. You have to use the list local and then filter like so, and etc. But sometimes just writing out verbosely helps out. So anywho, I recommend you submit this into handed and check your given score for string within n. All right, and make sure it passes the greater sight test. But anywho, that's about it for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.